Hey you guys, my name is Mara Sullivan. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today's video is about Bea Arthur, one of the fabulous ladies who put the gold in golden. I am doing a whole series here on my channel on my favorite influential women over 60, and I cannot do a series on my favorite women over 60 without talking about my actual favorite women over 60, the Golden Girls. It is my favorite show of all time, and as incredible as those characters are, the actual women, who played those characters are even more incredible off screen, like as people, and their actual life stories are even more incredible than the characters that they played. So I'm doing videos on all of the Golden Girls. Obviously, this video is Bea Arthur, doing a video on Rue McClanahan, Betty White, Estelle Getty, and they just have such fabulous, incredible stories, really amazing lives. They've all been through so much, and like I said, there's just always so much more to the artist, to the actor, the actress than what we know them for. When I love taking the time to study people's stories, it's my favorite hobby. It's what I do for fun. It is, being a nerd and just deep diving into everyone's story who I am a fan of. I can't just be a fan of someone, I need to know everything about them. And so that is what this series is about. This series is also inspired by people in my own life, always referring to me as a grandma because I have a lot of grandma like ways. I say that I'm always like pretty much retired in my head. Like I still work, but in my head, I am fully retired. I'm at the old folks home. I'm just playing golf every day, laying on a beach somewhere. Like I read a newspaper, I still listen to the radio. I just have, you know, an old soul, and I'm fully leaning into that by doing this series. I learn the most from people who are older than me, and so yeah, I'm just fully leaning into that with this series. And Bea Arthur has such a beautiful, such an incredible story. So my number one takeaway from Bea Arthur's life is that she never, ever, ever let people's opinions of her. She never let her own insecurities stop her from pursuing her dreams and from living the life that she wanted, from becoming the woman she wanted to be, the actress that she wanted to be. Bee's entire life, she was made fun of for her looks. Like from the time she was a kid all the way up until she was, you know, on Golden Girls and beyond, she was unfortunately made fun of for her looks and for her voice. And she jokes, but I'm pretty sure it was probably true. She jokes that, and I know that all of these women, by the way, are deceased, but if I do refer to them in the present tense, is because I still watch I still watch Golden Girls every single day. And so, and to me they're still here, but I'm fully aware that, all of these women have unfortunately transitioned, but they lived such beautiful lives. But if I talk about them in the present tense, just know I am aware that they are no longer here, but they're still alive in spirit. But yes, so she was made fun of her entire life. She talks about when she was in grade school. She, because she knew she always wanted to be an actress. She loved performing, but she used to be cast as male roles because she was tall and because she always had a lower voice. And she also said that one of the things that always like got to her was she said that she was that tall, as tall as she was as an adult. She jokes that she was that tall when she was 12, which I'm pretty sure was true, even though she says it like jokingly or said it jokingly. I'm pretty sure that was true. She was like, I've just always been this tall. She's always had that low voice, but it ended up really working out for her because it made her perfect for classical musical theater. So her height and her lower voice actually ended up benefiting her in the theater, which, she was able to use to her advantage. But it's such a huge lesson and such a huge takeaway to, not let people's opinions of you and even your own insecurities stand in the way of pursuing your dreams, stand in the way of doing what you want to do. I am insecure about my arms, and I like intentionally make myself wear things that my arms are going to be exposed because I know it's an insecurity, but like I got more working out to do. I have more weights to lift, but right now this just is what it is, And I'm fully embracing that, and I'm just like, it is what it is. But just don't let little things or insecurities or people's opinions stop you from doing what you want to do. And one of the things that she says that really stuck out to me when she talks about Golden Girls, she talks about how all of the other characters, the things that they were made fun of on the show, like their characters were made fun of on the show, were not real or like specific to them, but hers was. And so she says that um, Betty White and Rue McClanahan were able to let, you know, the jokes made about them on the show rub off their backs, because she said that we all knew Betty White was not dumb, and we all knew Rue McClanahan was not as promiscuous as Blanche, but all of the jokes that were made about Dorothy were specifically about her looks and her voice, and those were actually true to her. And so she internalized a lot of, the jokes made on the show, which if you go back and watch the show, it's like, oh yeah, like it's comedy, but like you pick up on it. And sorry, making sure my mic is on. But she just talks about how much that really did affect her, and she really did internalize a lot of that. And it actually like got to her like really bad one day, and she like had to walk off the set because she was so I don't know, it just got to be too much for her, because she's like, you guys have been calling me basically ugly for years and I can't take it anymore. And she kind of like just had a moment. And it's so understandable, because again, like the things that they were saying about her were personal to her, unlike the other characters on the show. But she kept going, and she was able to use her height and her voice to her advantage. Like I said, she did do musical, she was perfect for classical musical theater, and then she ended up working in comedy. She did try to like be like a lounge, more of like a jazz bar type singer, but the owner like ended up firing her because he said that she was like too serious and no one was gonna believe, like she wasn't believable with the songs that she was singing. Like she was just like, it just wasn't working. But the one good thing that came from that was that the owner of the club actually told her, like, you should consider getting into comedy because you're so serious. And it actually worked out, because comedy is being able to be terribly serious, is how she put it. And it's so true, because when you think about the best comedians, they are so serious and able to keep that's what Dorothy's character was. Like, she's able to keep such a straight face by being absolutely hilarious, but she's dead serious. It's the same thing with Betty White being able to play Rose Nyland. She is dead serious when she's telling those St. Olaf stories, when she's acting dumb as a rock. Like, she's so serious, and that's what makes the show so funny. That's what makes any comedian so funny, is when they're able to be dead serious and like keep a straight face and get that reaction. And so because she was actually like serious in real life, and she called herself uptight, she refers to herself as always being like a little stiff and super serious. And so she actually ended up being great in comedy, which is so crazy, because you would think that someone who takes themselves too seriously and who is uptight and who just has a more reserved personality would not be great at comedy, because when you think comedy, you think laughter. But she was able to be so successful in comedy because she was so serious. And so one of my favorite things about her is also that she's able to play into her strengths and embrace her strengths and focus so much more on her strengths rather than her weaknesses, her insecurities, what people had to say about her looks, what she thought about her looks. She was just able to really shift the focus and shift the perspective to her strengths, to being funny, to her sense of humor. She does, or did admit to like using humor to cover up, like to cope with, a lot of the insecurities, to cope with things that people were saying about her. But it ended up really working out for her, and it definitely paid off. But she ended up getting into comedy and loved it. She became great friends with Norman Lear, and that led to her doing Maude. If you have never watched Maude, it is an incredible show. I absolutely love that show. Rue McClanahan is also in Maude. That's like when they first worked together, and the show is so funny. That character is so, it's a little like Dorothy, but Maude is the main character of that show, and it's very controversial. It's a little more, in my opinion, controversial than Golden Girls. Like, Maude touches on all of the taboo topics that were like even more taboo to talk about back then. Maude addresses abortion. Maud talks about that show is politics, it's racism, it hits on menopause, like a menopausal pregnancy. That show is so good if you haven't seen Maud. And if you're watching this and you're my age, you may not have seen the show, but I highly recommend watching it. Again, I'm a grandma. All I do is watch old TV shows. Like, this is my lane, okay? Um, but yeah, Mod is so good. It was definitely ahead of its time, and it was just so controversial, especially back then. Like, if it aired today, it would still be considered, controversial. But back then, it was just like unheard of to do the things that they were doing on the show, and that's why the show was so successful. And Bea Arthur specifically just carried that show and just made it soar. Like, she made that character absolutely soar. It's a great like feminist show, and Bea Arthur herself, I believe, was a feminist. She was very supportive of LGBTQ plus. She gave a lot of her money. Actually, a big part of her estate went to charity, and a lot of that went to LGBTQ plus like youth. And I think she left somewhere like $300,000 of her estate when she passed away went to LGBTQ plus like foundation. But she is just absolutely incredible. She was so ahead of the game, ahead of her time, and it's just she's someone who is such an excellent reminder to perfect your talent, and everything else really won't matter. Not saying that looks don't matter, it's Hollywood, but what really matters is the message at the end of the day that you are getting across to your audience. It matters, your message matters, and your the perfection of your craft matters. People can tell when you've taken time to learn your skill. She took time and she perfected comedy, she perfected performance, she perfected getting a laugh out of an audience. And that is not easy to do. And so, just really, when you're able to hone in on something and take it seriously and commit your entire life to it, like, the benefits are so rewarding. She does talk a lot about, her family. She did have two divorces, two marriages, two divorces, and obviously she had two divorces. She was married twice, sorry. But first husband, it just didn't work out. Second husband it was a pretty long marriage. They had kids together. She talks about being a very loving mother. She did not, at first, she almost didn't do Mod because it was filming in LA and her family was in New York, and she also hated flying. And she had to uproot her family to move from New York to LA to do the show. It was a whole thing. But, thank God she did, because that show ended up leading to Golden Girls, and, she just soared on television. But it almost didn't happen because she really did love her family and her boys so, so much. And her second marriage, she does talk about, like, pretty in depth about the struggles that her career took on her marriage. And so, like, another huge life lesson that I learned from her is that it is okay if you do end up becoming the breadwinner in your family, and it's also okay to, if it doesn't work out with a man who, you know, is not okay with that and is not okay with his own career. And she does talk very openly about how how much her career took a toll on her marriage. And like I said, they had a pretty good marriage. Like, they stayed together for a long time. They worked together in a few things because he also worked in film and television, but he just, was never really able to like hit his stride as much as she was. Like, his career unfortunately started to decline. He went through health issues where she had to become the breadwinner because I believe he had hepatitis at one point. And so, it was a lot of her working and being kind of like the dominant role in that marriage. And like, the career just took a very like heavy toll on her marriage. And she's like super open and talking about that. And she was struggling so much on the show, actually, like so much on Golden Girls. Like, her marriage was struggling, and then she also had to take care of her mom. Her mom got sick as soon as like the Golden Girls started. Her mom got sick and actually ended up passing right when Golden Girls took off. And so the fact that she was able to do that show and do it so well while going through so much in her personal life is just such a huge lesson in professionalism as well. And also a great reminder that having a creative outlet does help in, grief. It helps in, be help coping with what may be going on, in other areas of your life. having work, having a creative outlet, having something that you do that does make you happy and does make you laugh, I'm sure that it did help her, you know, to cope and to deal with the grief that she was experiencing for her mother and for, the decline of her marriage, other personal things going on. She does like talk about, that at one point she was drinking too much and just how, hard that time was for her when she was on the Golden Girls, which is so insane because we would never know it watching the show. But she was like really going through a lot during that time. And it's just so inspiring to me too, because I just lost my mom last year. And doing this and doing my podcast and having creative outlets and things that make me happy and of course watching the Golden Girls has been like the biggest help for me in like grief. And so I am just such a huge advocate for leaning into everything that makes you happy, especially when you are going through hard times, and just having healthy ways to cope, especially if you can find like a creative act, something that you're super passionate about, but you can also create and be artistic in it. And if you've never read like Suleika's books as well, Suleika Jawad is an author who really talks about how survival is an act of creativity, and her books get super into that. That's a tangent, but like that's something I'm super passionate about, is using creativity to cope with hard things that you might be dealing with in your life, because it does work. And but yeah, she talks about how much of a struggle, the show actually was for her. And Rue McClanahan, I was listening to her in an interview, talked about how she was really happy on the show, and Betty White was super happy with the show, but it was kind of obvious that Bea Arthur was not as happy as the rest of the girls were while they were doing that show. And she did have so much going on in her personal life. And it's also interesting to me how different, they also talk about this, and Bea Arthur talks about this herself, she was so different than the character she was playing. And I think that a lot of times it was hard for people to separate the two, especially because she was just aesthetically, she had a more like dominating presence. She was taller and she did have a lower voice. And so people kind of took that as her being serious all the time or being like in charge. And the character she played, like again, if you watch Maud was very assertive and very in charge. And Bea Arthur was actually the complete opposite. People in real life, and Rue McClanahan has talked about her being like this as well. She was very sensitive in real life. Again, she was made fun of her whole life. So she, even though she was really strong, she was also very sensitive. She was very soft spoken. She was very emotional. Her son, I was listening to her son on one of her documentaries. Her son said that like it did not take much for her to cry. She was very emotional. And so I think that it had to be really hard to go through life with like people having one perception of you and not, you know either living up to that expectation or knowing that that's not who you really are, never really being allowed to like be your true self. And she was very much an introvert. She was very private, like I said, very sensitive. And she just went through a lot of her life with people treating her the opposite. Rue McClanahan talked about, when she would be on the streets in New York and people would be like, what is it like to work with Bea Arthur? Is she so scary? And Bea Arthur, and Rue McClanahan would be like, scary. Like, why would I be scared of her? She's like the sweetest, most sensitive person ever. Like, there's no reason to be scared of her, but that was people's perception of her for most of her life, unfortunately. And, you can tell like just all of those things really took a toll on her. But she managed to live such an incredible life. She does talk about the show, like her acting career being so successful that, like I said, it took a toll on her marriage. And she does talk about wanting to be home, like wishing that she had been home a lot more. But she does say that it was so rewarding and it was definitely worth it for her, to have that success on TV and to, be able to do what she loved. And she also got like her like major success like the first time in theater from doing, I believe it was called the Three Penny Opera, which I had never seen, but I definitely want to see it. And I'm gonna see if I can find some like videos of it somewhere. But she, talks about how much she loved theater and being on stage. And one of the things she talked about, going back to her insecurities, when she was in theater, she did a show, and the like lead actress told her, you have what it takes to be in the lead. You can play this part. it's just a matter of bone structure. So she basically just told her she didn't have the face for it. She was like, you have the talent, but it's a matter of bone structure. And Bea Arthur was like, instead of getting mad at her, or like instead of, being sad about that, or being like, being on stage just isn't for me and giving up on her dream, Bea Arthur was like, I'm gonna show you. She was like, you miserable biatch. Like, I'm gonna show you. And she ended up becoming Bea Arthur, like glamorous, fabulous, and she just is so inspiring, and it's just such a great lesson, and a great story, and just a great reminder to never ever 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 let people's opinions about you, your own insecurities, stop you and keep you from doing what you want to do. Perfect your talent, perfect your craft, and focus on pursuing your dreams. Have that tunnel vision, and just tune out everything else. Basically tune out all the noise. Like, she ended up being the lead in not just one but two TV shows, like two of the biggest TV shows in history. And so I'm sure that lady who said that to her, we don't even know her name. Okay, like, we don't even know her name, but we know who the author is. And it's just, people don't define you. Like, insecurities don't define you, your looks don't even define you. Like, nothing defines you except what you tell yourself. Who you tell yourself you are is the only thing that defines you. It's the only thing that matters. Another thing that I love about Bea Arthur is that she always knew when to leave. She never like ran anything into the ground. Like I said, she was, star of two of the biggest TV shows in history. And on Maude, she left after 7 years. On Golden Girls, she also left after 7 years. And Golden Girls, by the way, she did not want to do. She wanted no part of Golden Girls. The producers had to beg Rue McClanahan to convince Bea Arthur to be on Golden Girls because she wanted no part of it. Like I said, she had a lot going on in her personal life, and I think, like, she was just tired and like wanted to stay home, because she was such, like, her son describes her as like, she just wanted to be home. Like, all she wanted to do was be home. But she also had such a talent, and such a, you know when you're that talented and when you're that funny and that good at what you do, you can't not do it. You can't just not do it. And so, Rue McClanahan had to beg her basically to be on Golden Girls, and thank God that she did. And, but she talks about, not wanting any part of that show. She did not want to be on that show. And we are just so grateful that she ended up taking that role, taking that part. And what I love so much about her is that she really, really did not run anything into the ground. She left while on top. Always. She always left while like at the top of her game. And same thing with Maude. Like, they wanted to keep running the show. She was like, I'm done. Same thing with Golden Girls. They wanted to keep going with the show, and they did keep going with the show, and actually regretted doing the spinoff to Golden Girls, The Golden Palace, which I actually liked. Okay, like, a lot of people hate on that show. I kind of liked it. I'm not gonna lie. I like Golden Palace, but I do get why people didn't. The show just didn't do well. It wasn't the same without Dorothy. I mean, it's hard to do that. They had the. It's not even a trifecta. What is it called if it's four people? Quin Quin Quinfecta would be five people. Quadfecta? I don't know. They had the perfect lineup with four girls, but and she was just always like, her timing was just really, really well in her career. She never wanted to like overdo anything. She never wanted to overstay her welcome. It reminds me of, I did a video on Jamie Lee Curtis, and she said that she learned from her parents from being in Hollywood to leave the party before you stop being invited, especially in Hollywood, because you will stop being invited at some point. And I just love, how she didn't run things into the ground. She didn't, try to keep making it work until like beat a dead horse, basically. She was very self aware and knew when it was time to go, when it was time to bow out gracefully. And there's a lot of people that aren't good at that, especially in Hollywood. Like, once something is working, you want to do it and do it and do it until you can't do it anymore. Like, but she wasn't like that. She was very much quit while you're ahead, go out on top, go out with a bang. You should leave the people wanting more. That is the like number one lesson, like, in her knowing when to leave. personality just like leave them wanting more always. And she was definitely the queen of that, just knowing when to go, not overdoing it. And it definitely worked out for her very, very, very well. Unfortunately, she was a heavy smoker and ended up passing away from lung cancer. But like I said, she lived such an incredible life. There are so many takeaways and little nuggets and life lessons to be learned from her. My favorite ones that I have mentioned in this video is like never letting opinions or insecurities define you. Be professional. Her professionalism while going through hell in her personal life, was incredible on that show, like on Golden Girls and in Maude. If I cannot stress this enough, if you have not watched Maude, please watch Maude. It is so funny. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy Bea Arthur, if you enjoy the Golden Girls. And I've just learned so much from her life and from her life story. Let me know your favorite episode down below, and go check out the other videos that I have in this series. I hope you enjoyed this one, and I will talk to you in my next one. Bye.